Questions for reflection. We continue in our first reading for today's Holy Mass with more from the creation account found in the first book of the Bible, Genesis. Notice the pattern here. God speaks, and through the Word, creation comes into being. He made the universe through the Word. Remember, as Catholic Christians, we read the Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament, through the lens, what theologians call the hermeneutic, of the Paschal Mystery, the saving life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. In the first chapter of the fourth Gospel, the Gospel of St. John, we read these words, and I quote, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made." End quote. Then a little down, in that same chapter, we read these words in verse 14. "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, full of grace and truth. We have beheld his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father." End quote. Jesus is the incarnate Word, the Word through whom the universe was created. He is the one who assumed our humanity and recreated us in himself, beginning the new creation. The psalm response continues to point us toward reflection on the dignity of the children of Adam. And as the book of Genesis continues in our first reading, we come to one of the accounts of the creation of man and woman in the image of God. In Latin, the Imago Dei. And I quote, "God said, 'Let us make man in our own image, in the likeness of ourselves.'" And it continues, "God created man in the image of himself. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them." End quote. In one of several of his disputes with the teachers of the law, the one found in the 10th chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, Jesus quotes this very passage from Genesis in defending the indissolubility of marriage and condemning divorce. Do we really read and study the creation accounts? We should. They are jam-packed with deep insights, which will help us to grow in understanding the mysteries of the faith. Notice two more things in our first reading for our reflection today. As God speaks and creates man and woman, we read these words, quote, "Let us make man in our own image," end quote. The sacred text uses the plural in Hebrew. The rabbis were perplexed with this fact and had many reflections upon it. Again, the Christian sees in this use of the plural an early reference to the doctrine of the Holy Trinity. The Father created us through the Word, the Son, and by the Holy Spirit. And notice as well, and I quote, "Male and female he created them." In the creation account in the second chapter of Genesis, it becomes even clearer. God says, and I quote, "It is not good for man to be alone. So he fashions the woman, and marriage is instituted." Part of being created in the Imago Dei, the image of God, is the call to give oneself away to another in love. This kind of self-giving love, which brings the spouses to holiness and images Christ's love for his church. This reflects the very inner life of the Trinitarian God, who is one, but not solitary. Have you ever considered the deeper meaning of the creation account in the book of Genesis? In the gospel text appointed for Mass today, taken from St. Mark, we're presented with another tussle between Jesus and the teachers of the law. One can sense the frustration in Jesus. They look at fidelity with the law from the outside in. They emphasize the outside behavior and neglect the matters of the heart. The word heart in the biblical sense means much more than the fleshy organ at the center of our chest. The Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches, and I quote, "The heart is the seat of moral personality." That's paragraph 2517, the seat of moral personality. The place where we make the choices which not only change the world around us, but change us. The New Testament is filled with examples of the connection between what we choose and who we become. Two will suffice to make the point. We become adulterers when we look at a woman with lust, Matthew 5:28. And what comes out of our heart is what makes us unclean, Mark 7. In short, our freedom has consequences. The capacity to make choices is constitutive of our being human persons and reflects an aspect of the Imago Dei, the image of God, present within us. The Fathers of the Second Vatican Council wrote in their document on the mission of the Church, quote, "Authentic freedom is an outstanding manifestation of the divine image within man." That's Gaudium et Spes, number 17. How do we understand the moral teaching of the Bible and the Church? Is our understanding of that teaching outside in or inside out?